There is no more powerful tool on earth than human speech. You can do anything or get anything done, or consider what you could do if you were remarkably persuasive.
Remarkable raconteur, Neal Foard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello again.
Hello.
How are you, Mr.?
Oh, I am awesome. Thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing all right.
All right is all right. I have a curiosity, and I'm sure everyone would love to hear about your aha moment that led you to becoming the artful curator you are.
Um, well, I came from a background in advertising, and I spent 30 years on the creative side of that business. And like a lot of industries where, say, for example, you've probably heard the old phrase, "The cobbler's children have no shoes." And it's when you are in a profession, you sometimes lose sight of the fact that you need that profession. When in advertising on the creative side of business, our job was to come up with very clever ideas that would help to market a product or a service. And it was remarkable to me how seldom we used the tools of our trade in order to sell our own ideas to clients. Our expectation was you could simply put a good idea in front of a client and have them see it. They saw the good idea. But that's not how most people are. Most people can't see, they don't recognize a good idea when it's staring them in the face. And uh, I mean, if we were any good, all of us, at spotting a good idea just on the page, we would all run movie studios and we would never have anything but hits. But we know only too well that there's a William Goldman phrase in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. Every time somebody says anything confidently, it's because they don't understand what they don't know. Well, in advertising, my principal mission over time became not the creation of ideas, but the selling of the ideas to clients. And I wound up becoming the Saatchi and Saatchi's worldwide head of creative education, which essentially was just teaching young creative people how to present their ideas so that they would be understood, so that they could communicate where is the idea here? Why is it insightful? What about it is going to alter consumer behavior?
Hmm.
And that specialty, which was unique to just a few of us, that specialty is when I really became a student of storytelling. How much is too much? How much is not enough? Where is the drama in the use of language? There is a truism that I only began to really truly appreciate in my later years, which was there is no more powerful tool on earth than human speech. You can do anything or get anything done, or consider what you could do if you were remarkably persuasive. You could talk your way out of a Turkish prison or onto an airplane, or I'll give you a good example, Misty.
Sure, I'd
Okay.
love to hear it.
So I'm in line at Newark Airport in the security line, the TSA line. And I only discover when I am at face to face with the TSA person, I do not have my identification. I have nothing. The, the most I have is like a health club membership with no picture on it. All right.
How did you talk your
Now,
way through that one?
it was essentially this. So I get to the front and he it was a guy. He sees me, pull out my wallet and do this.
Oh.
Okay. So I do the frantic, oh crap. And then look at him and I go, I don't have my driver's license. I left it in my coat, at home. And he takes a look at me and he sees that I'm wearing a business suit. I have a very small carry-on, so it's unlikely that I am a terrorist. And he looks at me. This is what he does. He looks at me and then he looks at the line and he goes, "Go ahead." Now,
Amazing.
this what this teaches me is that anywhere is subject to persuasion. Like he has no business letting me through that line. But he did a very quick calculus of what is the likelihood that this person's going to bite him in the butt. It's very low. My performance in searching for my ID was convincing. And, in other words, the galvanic shock of realizing, oh, crap, I'm not going to be able to get on my flight was persuasive. Okay, which means that in almost any circumstance, there is wiggle room for persuasion. There is uh, almost anything, up to and including your taxes. I'm sure there's a way to get around almost anything.
Oh,
So when we were in our advertising presentations where we would present clients with ideas, the pressure that the client is under is they have to decide based on what you're telling them whether this ethereal thing, this idea, is going to be sufficiently persuasive to get people to purchase their product or service. And they have to be able to go, is this idea better than this idea? I like this idea, but they're telling me this one's going to work better. How do they know? And then we would engage in these are the pieces of data and or analytics or experience or simple instinct that leads us to believe that this is going to happen. Well, that takes some doing to talk somebody into something on something so gossamer thin on logic.
mm-hmm.
And so that was the art form that I practiced. And from a couple of decades of that, it turned into something that I wasn't just kind of good at, but I really enjoyed. That was the thing I liked most
Oh,
about the entire
beautiful.
business was telling
Be
the stories along with the idea that I'm hoping you'll find this persuasive.
Beautiful. And when you were spending time teaching your colleagues, what were some of the common pitfalls you noticed that they should avoid?
When I was a student in Silicon Valley at a place called Menlo College, we had the opportunity to visit a place called the Stanford Research Institute, where they had an array of Cray computers. In that time, Cray computing was the absolute, it was the apex predator of computational power. And they had built something that they referred to as the world model, where they had assembled all of the world's economic data and political data and every other kind of data and analytics they could get their hands on, fed them into the computer for the purposes of making predictions about things like market movements and recessions and so on. We got to the end of the tour and they asked us if we had any questions. And naturally, we all wanted to know how good it was. Like, did it work? What
Right.
could you predict with accuracy? And the guy said, oh, there's one thing that we know with 100% certitude. And that is whatever that machine tells us is going to happen, that's definitely not going to happen. Because what you discover early is one small piece of missing information completely slants an outcome. And there was no possible way we could accumulate enough data to only be missing small bits of it. It's a little bit like somebody who gets their history from memes. Say, for example, what do you know about George Washington? And somebody's entire image in their mind about George Washington is based on the story of him chopping down a cherry tree and saying, I cannot tell a lie. Like that's all you know about George Washington. And you're drawing conclusions from that. Never mind the gigantic swaths of missing information.
I wonder if
So
he made his wooden teeth from that cherry tree.
so this is one of the things that we have to train all of our people is don't walk in with too much confidence. Too much confidence signals ignorance.
Mm.
You do not have an appropriate appreciation for what you don't know you don't know. Okay, that was one thing. Another thing that we would tell them is do not make yourself the center of attention. Don't cast yourself as either the hero of a story or as the person who rode in to save the day. If you have a great idea, don't even tell them it was your idea. Um, because to celebrate your own idea, your own brilliance, indicates that you have a dog in the fight and you're betting on that for your own aggrandizement or remuneration. So, in other
Mm.
words, never claim ownership of an idea for fear that they will say he only wants to advance that idea because it is his. It's This is why it's a very, very good truth that anytime you can make somebody feel as though something is their idea, you are vastly more likely to get them to buy it. Um,
Agree that meta concept of when you get people to say things themselves, they believe it.
yeah, they tend to.
Similar.
There's
Hmm.
a to throw some other fuel on that fire. There is a concept called convergent validity. Was that when somebody sees a message on television, and then they see the same message on an outdoor board as they're driving along the highway, and then they hear it on the radio or they see it in a web broadcast, all of those things converge, even though it's the same message, because it's come in through different doorways. Their belief that the idea is true, the validity of the idea, goes up about 35%.
Really?
So this is why repeating advertisements is so important. Why you have to keep banging away at it. For example, you don't go to Catholic Mass once. They get you there every week. And what do? They say the exact same thing. You go through the ritual, it's the constant repetition that finally manages it to seat it in your mind. And then once they've banged away at this one thing that they keep saying over and over, then they give you the sermon. Okay, here's the different part. And so, same is true of advertising. You have to choose the one thing you want them to believe about you or know about you, just one thing, because they can't remember anything else. And you hammer it and hammer it and hammer it again and again in different media. And
Mm.
only then does it manage to penetrate. But then this is why stories are so vastly more effective than simply bullet points or just making a claim. A story is something that human beings remember and emotionally react to. And if you can get somebody to react emotionally to something, that will be a long lasting memory. There are two parts of the minds that take in memories. One of them is the hippocampus. That's the part of your neocortex where, when you take in memory, it sorts memory. Our human brains are actually not good at holding information. They're good at sorting and discarding information. Is that something I need to remember? No, get rid of it. If that, you need to prioritize information. But we have very, very long lasting emotional memories: trust, love, jealousy, hatred, affection, and so forth, amusement. Emotional memories last a long time because that is how we gauge one another as threat or friend.
Mm.
It's how we know, um, for example, you can see a patient get better just because they can see the nurse that they like in the hallway. They don't have to have any kind of actual um, call and response. It doesn't have to be an actual conversation for them to have the same reassurance just knowing they are around because they like them. That's an emotional memory, the fact that I like you. Well, stories go in through the amygdala, the limbic part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain. And therefore, even though they may not, you don't even have to believe a story, you just have to remember it for it to have its emotional impact on you. Stories, by the way, are something that people can, it's astonishing how we can repeat the story of the tortoise and the hare 30 years after the last time we heard it.
And still hit
Um,
all the points.
and still pretty much remember it as it was constructed, the
Hmm.
important part of the structure. And whereas if I told you three bullet points now, you would only remember one by the time we were done talking, and you wouldn't remember any in a week's time. It's Human minds are not good at holding on to data or bullet points, but they are exquisitely good at remembering stories. It's the default setting of human beings. Believe it or don't believe it, that's how it goes. And embrace it or don't embrace it. If you don't embrace it, if you don't communicate through stories, you're not giving yourself the advantage of the most memorable style of communication for another human being.